My name is Gerald Chambers. I'm a marriage and family therapist. And today I want to talk about a myth in domestic violence education. All batterers are alike. There are different types of batterers. Each type has unique characteristics, family history, expected outcomes when punished by the courts, or educated by groups for batterers. The two types I want to discuss today are cobras and pit bulls. I learned about these types when years ago when I read a book called When Men Batter Women by Neil Jacobson and John Gottman. And I've always had a great interest in these two because while I was working with batterers, I would notice this type and didn't really have a name for it or know what to call it. And then when they wrote this book, it kind of clicked. That's what I was looking at. You know, they discovered these two types while working with couples in their laboratory. They in their particular laboratory, they have blood pressure monitors, heart rate monitors, and that kind of stuff. And they would call couples in and have them have conflict, and they could measure those heart rate and blood pressure. And they discovered that there was a type of abusive man, a type of batterer that when he got angry, his blood pressure and heart rate actually went down, and they labeled him a cobra. And that was unusual. So let's talk about cobras first. Cobras appear to be criminal types. They've had, maybe conduct disorder since childhood, antisocial behavior since adolescence. They were always in trouble. They were in gangs. Maybe like the outcasts. They were maybe involved in fighting and all kinds of activity as kids growing up. They're hedonistic, they're impulsive. Cobras need to get what they want when they want it, right now. They're usually not sorry. They feel entitled. Some of them are psychopaths. They lack a conscience. They're incapable of feeling remorse. They exhibit a diminished capacity for experiencing a wide range of emotions and an inability to understand the emotions of others. They lack the ability to sympathize. They don't experience empathy. Well, if they do experience empathy, they don't act on it. That's not there. They're not moved by it. Acts of altruism are really about self-centeredness and selfishness on the under. They don't experience soft emotions like sadness. They rarely experience fear unless it's a fear of something that's going to happen to them. Not all cobras are psychopaths. Whether psychopathic or antisocial, they lack the ability to form truly intimate relationships, and their relationships are typically on their terms. Girlfriends and wives are instruments for their gratification, sex, money, status, that sort of thing. These are the type of guys that wouldn't have a problem pimping a woman, taking something. They're looking to exploit their partners. They practice mind over matter. I don't mind, you don't matter. Their stance in a relationship is a withdrawing one. They're giving very little of themselves. Attempt to keep intimacy at a minimum. They're likely to get angry when their women or partners try to get more out of them. They don't fear abandonment. They will not be controlled. They have rough family histories, a lot of abuse in their background, a lot of neglect. They've seen a lot of violence. They've seen a lot of things that they shouldn't have seen as children. As adults, they have a history of antisocial behavior, high likelihood of drug and alcohol abuse, and the severely psychologically and physically abusive. And one thing about cobras, the violence is not limited to their partners. They fight inside and outside the relationship. Their wives and girlfriends fear them and are usually pretty depressed. Cobras are often economically dependent on their wives or their partners. They're trying to extract. And it's often their partners that fight for the relationship. They have a macabre charisma. They have that it factor. There's something about them. They're very charismatic. Now, pit bulls, on the other hand, confine violence to family members, especially their wives. Their fathers likely to have beat their mothers. They learn through their experience that battering women is acceptable behavior. And they're not as likely as cobras to have any criminality in their background. These were like good guys. These were like hero types that get caught up, and end up battering their women. They're emotionally dependent on their wives and partners. They're most afraid of abandonment. Fear of abandonment and a dependence on their partners, they're hanging on and depriving their partners of an independent life. They can be jealous to the point of paranoia. Somewhat less violent than cobras in general, but they can also be pretty violent. They can even murder, just like cobras. They may be safer to leave in the short term and harder to leave in the long run because, like the name implies, they sink their teeth in and don't want to let go. That fear of abandonment comes up. Now, cobras, on the other hand, strike swiftly with intensity when they feel threatened. So these cobras and pit bulls, now remember, the cobra is a reptile and a pit bull is a mammal. So that's an easy way to remember. And we kind of see these archetypes in our society, in people. We got lots of people that kind of act like cold. They don't have empathy. They don't really care. They don't mind exploiting you. And then we got people that hold on. We got that type of, that pit bull is a type of batterer that, there are like all different kinds of people that batter. Anybody could end up in this situation. And the pit bull could also be viewed as kind of a situational batterer. When they lose status or rank, or they're socially isolated, or they can't determine a real threat from a non-threat, they can lash out and hurt you. But those are the two differences. I really like that distinction. It's easy. Now there are more. These are called typologies. There are more typologies than this. These are just the ones that I like. And I particularly like them because I see examples of it in our society. So like working with cobras and pit bulls is different in groups. So cobras are kind of, they're not really amenable to treatment. They're not going to be all that interested in changing. They've been involved in crime, so they're not afraid of like consequences. They're kind of like, they would come into the group, see that the atmosphere isn't conducive to them acting like they like to act, and just controlling, and we're imposing some limits on them, and they'll bounce. They'll be like, catch me if you can, and then they're not going to engage very much in treatment. They're going to look at me and Sharon in the group, and they're going to feel they're going to feel upset about that because, feelings, emotions, all that kind of stuff, they don't deal in that. They're going to think of another man as soft if he talks about what's really going on with him. It might be better working with them to just put all of them in the same group and let them offend each other. Now the pit bull, on the other hand, is a little bit different because the fact that he got arrested, the fact that he got handcuffed, perhaps sent to jail, that might cure him a lot of times because remember, he has no criminal history. So and because he learned how to treat women poorly, he might be more interested in treatment to learn how not to do that. He has empathy. He doesn't like that behavior. He doesn't want to be seen as a batterer. And he might come in and be very motivated to change. Not all of them, but most of them. And that pit bull will be more remorseful. Remember, he has that ability to be remorseful. He really doesn't like his behavior on the most part. It's very shaming to him. That cobra, on the other hand, doesn't really have that level of shame, or that level of shame doesn't bother him. So they're a little bit different in working with them in treatment. That real antisocials in treatment are kind of rare. Now behind bars, it's a different thing. But in a group where, like an open group, where a guy's been prosecuted, he's supposed to go find a group to go to. They don't really last that long. They'd be like the kind of guy that'll take off, forget about it, and then have a broken tail light on the car a year later and get pulled over and discover that he's got a warrant and got to go back. They'll turn a 52-week program into like a BA program. It'd be a 4-year program for him. He'll be going back and forth, in and out, just dragging his feet and resisting all the way. Not all of them, but most of them, many of them. And so just basic differences between the two. I thought I would, first define them, and then talk a little bit about what they're like to work with, and then just give a little bit of my experience working with them. And so if you like this video, hit the like button, leave me a comment, share it with friends. We need to start talking about this. We need to start. I'm really strongly suggesting that we educate ourselves about intimate partner violence. We don't usually hear much from perpetrators. We usually, when we think about domestic violence, we think about victims, and we really need to start working with perpetrators. This is a man's problem for the most part, all around the world. And we really need to start looking at it. We really need to start talking to people that have experience working with men on this issue. Thanks for listening.